Welcome to the 23rd episode of the Illiterates podcast, your home for uninformed, unfiltered, ill-advised movie talk. I'm your host, Joe Campbell, and today joining me is Nathan, as always.
Hey, what's up?
You okay there, Nate?
Oh yeah.
Digging into some Halloween candy, is that right?
Pretty much. Just the stuff I'm going to be, sending to you, Joe. So I'm just been testing out the Halloween candy, just to make sure it's safe for the kids and all.
I do not want your razor-infested candy, Nate.
Hey, I'm just to make sure there's no razors in it, or poison, or anything like that. So I'm going through half of it right now. So
doing the Lord's work.
Exactly.
And joining us today also is Alex Patton. Welcome back, Alex.
Yay, I'm back.
Hey,
Hello.
How you doing? What's going on?
How much?
Not much.
Watching animes?
Yeah.
Playing games?
Yeah. Playing games, yeah. Nothing's changed.
Living in the basement.
I'm out of the basement. I'm recording my room, so.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
So today is a special Halloween episode of our podcast. Guys, we don't have anything special planned. What we're going to do is a special grab bag episode. Now, for many of you, some of you listening to this may remember, probably don't. A while back for the Oscars, we did a special grab bag episode where we just took a whole topic, a whole bunch of random topics, put them in a random generator, and pick some out. Just do little quick conversations on. So today we're doing exactly that, but with Halloween horror movie topics. But before we get into that, let's talk about what we've all been watching and doing on our own. Alex, why don't you kick us off? Since you haven't, of course, you haven't been here for 2 episodes.
I know. So why don't you catch us up to speed?
On you first.
Of course. Well, Shadowkeep was finally released, the latest Destiny DLC. So I've been playing nothing but that. When it dropped, I took like 5 days off work just to play it.
Just for that, he took his vacation time just for play Destiny.
Yeah, it's important, man.
Of course.
Yeah.
Good man.
But it's been good so far. There's a lot more stuff to do. It feels there's still some work to be done, especially in the PvP aspect. But there's a lot of good stuff and a lot of fun stuff to do. The seasonal activity is actually pretty fun and pretty easy. It's easy to grind for gear and stuff like that. Story-wise is actually really cool. Left still a bunch of questions, so hopefully we'll actually get some answers. But it seems like they're going back to stories that were left kind of open-ended from from back in like D1. So it's nice to be getting a little bit of closure and a little bit more updates on that kind of thing. So it's been really good. I was able to beat the new raid within the first week or so. So I was able to get the raid jacket. So I'm really excited about that because that's the first time I've been able to do that. I've tried for it a few times before, but just never had the team to do it. Never had the light level high enough to do it. So finally got that done, which was nice. And the raid's it's a pain in the ass.
It's taking all of your coin, all of your time just to get that far.
The whole leading up to the final boss isn't bad, but it's just like once you get to the final boss, it's just like here's everything that you learned from like the previous encounters in the raid all at once, and you have to do everything all at once. And yeah, don't die, by the way.
That would be a good thing, you know.
Yeah.
It reminds me of Ready Player One, where it's like, don't die or you lose everything.
Joe, you're gonna have to stop comparing all of your experiences with gaming to Ready Player One.
Hey, it's Ready Player One or Super Mario World, okay? So you pick your choice.
I'd rather you pick Super Mario World.
That because that's an actual video game. Yeah,
exactly. Alex, I did want to ask.
Yeah.
You kind of mentioned like it's trying to wrap up on some storylines that the first Destiny kind of established. With the way it's going, do you see like them expanding this universe to try and explore more of the history or even just further storylines that maybe is like in their back burner but they haven't gotten across to it yet?
Oh yeah. I mean, one of the things that they're really pushing for ever since they became independent was having like a constantly, I can't remember the exact words that the lead designer Luke Smith put it, but it's like a constantly evolving world, and that doesn't just mean that the activities and stuff like that are constantly evolving, but the story as well. So hopefully that's meaning that we get a lot more loose ends from previous DLCs, from Destiny 1 being tied up, get some closure there. But it's of course going to bring in new stuff as well. I mean, that's the DLC has so far has done a bit of both. Still left a bunch of questions to be answered, but it's at least kind of
It's moving.
it's exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hopefully we won't see this is now kind of jabs at Disney right now or the Star Wars trilogy, but there's not going to be any repeat or resurrecting of any old characters. Like this will just be new stuff kind of going forward.
Kind of, I mean, yeah, sort of. They literally sort of did resurrect old characters in a way.
Why am I not surprised? I'm not surprised.
I mean, they literally, yeah, they resurrected old story bosses and raid bosses to be part of like missions. And the way they do it works within the story, of course, and works within kind of the lore and everything like that. But yeah, they are technically just resurrecting.
So why can't in the gaming world, like when a character dies, they stay dead? Why can't that happen?
I don't know. It's because people become attached to those characters.
That's what makes their death so great.
We got that at the beginning of last year with the like big expansion in Forsaken. Like literally, I think it was like almost everyone's favorite character was killed off. I think one of the reasons he was killed off was because the voice actor was unavailable for recording for the new DLC because he was doing a TV show. So maybe that's the reason. But I mean, yeah, we did lose a very, very major character in the game with no real.
But that's kind of like the rules of life, you know. You lose somebody, you move on.
Yeah.
All right. Well, enough Destiny. What else have you been doing?
Watched a little bit of anime. I don't remember if I talked about it last, but I was watching Fire Force, which is really good. I enjoyed that one. I'm stoked because they just started the I think it was the second season or whatever it is. But other than that, I started watching Made in Abyss, which I had heard really good things about. I think it won like best anime of the year for the Crunchyroll Awards.
Oh wow, really?
Yeah, it's either it won or it just of course lost to My Hero Academia like everything else. But it's really good so far. I'm close to the end. I think about 8 episodes in. I think there's 12. Like I've also heard it's a really heavy series to watch, and it hasn't really gotten that bad so far. So I'm interested in seeing what the last 4 episodes really lay down. But I'm excited.
Usually the last 4 will get you, so be prepared.
Oh, yeah.
They're gonna red wedding it in the last few episodes.
Sort of. I mean, like, well, kind of. There, to give an example of like kind of the opposite end, there was the latest season of Don Machi was like pretty action packed up until like the last few episodes, and then it just kind of like petered out, and it was really kind of unfortunate because the first season was great, and then the second season was nowhere near as good. Like the last few episodes was just like, all right, cool, that happened. Now what? Now we gotta wait for another season. Great. But anyway, that's essentially what I've been watching and playing.
Awesome. I guess I'll go next today. So most recently, I rewatched Mothra from 1961, directed by Ishiro Honda. Giant ancient moth begins to attack Japan when coming to the rescue of its 2-foot-tall worshippers who are taken by shipwreck survivors. So I'm a pretty big fan of Godzilla movies, like the old 1960s, 50s Godzilla movies. I watched a lot of them as a kid. Interesting thing about Mothra, the first Mothra movie. So there is no Godzilla in this one, but there's a lot of parallels to King Kong, the original King Kong, in that some people discover an island that no one's really been to for a long time. They go there, find some magical creatures and a tribe living there. And then they take something from the island that brings a monster to the mainland, which wreaks havoc. So, I mean, the way it goes about it is very different, but the general structure is very similar. Another interesting thing about this movie is that Mothra doesn't show up for most of this movie. Like, it's a good half hour, I think, till they actually get to the island. And when Mothra finally hatches out of her egg, we're probably more than halfway through the movie, I think. And she starts off in caterpillar form and eventually cocoons herself and becomes, the full-on Mothra form, like at the end of the movie. but it works for me anyway. I think for a lot of people, this will be a bit of a slow burn, a little bit too much lead up with very little payoff. But there's some great, kaiju action at the end, and the threat of Mothra kind of looms over this entire movie. So I dig it. I like this movie.
So in a way, it's almost kind of like you could see where I guess Peter Jackson was taking notes when he did his version of King Kong of, having the ape show up so late in the movie, probably from this movie.
Yeah, it's just kind of Mothra isn't in much of it, but everyone's always talking about her. And in a lot of these old Godzilla movies, there's a lot of human drama behind the scenes, or should I say, not behind the scenes, but I mean, other outside of the monster action. There's always criminals and the underworld and trying to do all this scheming stuff. So that's all there, but it's all connected to the Mothra plot, and it's got some of that iconic imagery, like Mothra flying over the city, and the little twin fairies are in there. They're iconic pieces of Mothra's legacy. So yeah, it's a neat little movie. I like it. So next thing I'm going to talk about. So I think on the last podcast, I talked about how I rewatched The Omen recently.
Yes.
So I wasn't intending on doing an Omen marathon. I was just going to watch the two that I like a lot, which is The Omen and Omen 3. But then I started watching Omen 3, and it opens up with the opening credits play over some cleanup from the previous movie, Omen 2. And I realized I didn't remember anything about Omen 2.
So you had to go watch Omen 2 now.
So I went back and popped in the Omen 2 and rewatched that one.
Is your opinion still the same in a way?
Yeah, it is. I still don't like it. Have you seen Omen 2, Nate?
I have. I mean, honestly, I'm not a big fan of sequels. I'm not a big fan of franchises. I always kind of feel like the first one does it best. So the second one, I wasn't too much of a fan of. I just felt like, okay, it's the same gimmicks as the first one, just maybe a bit more of a budget, But there's nothing that can replace the first Omen for me. Sorry.
Yeah, and I think with the second one, there are a couple of things that I pinned down as I think kind of major issues for me, at least, and that is in the first one you didn't really get to know Damien. He was almost a MacGuffin. He was always kind of in the background. You never really understood what his mindset is. Is he oblivious to everything that's going on, or is he willfully controlling it? You don't really know, which makes Gregory Peck's vendetta to try to kill him all the more kind of questionable, because like in the back of your head is always like, well, maybe this is just like some kid,
Yeah, maybe he's just like caught in the crossfire of all these other events going all around. Like you don't know if he's controlling it, and if what this other guy's telling him to do is like you need to put your son to death. It's like, no, you don't know. It's like, yeah. So that's like where the emotion, that's where the turmoil comes from.
But that becomes a problem when you carry that into the sequel, because we don't know Damien. Suddenly he's front and center as an older character. I think he's in his teens in this one, and you're supposed to like he has fully formed thought. He's not just like a little toddler running around anymore. He's this kid going to school, and he's an active character in the story. And we don't really know him. And as the movie goes on, it appears that the movie doesn't really know him either, because part of the movie is about him kind of finding out who he is, but we don't really care about him before that. So he's kind of a blank slate of a character that we just don't care about, and then he just kind of turns full evil. But another problem this movie has is that, so in the first one, it was all about Gregory Peck was investigating, trying to find out what was going on, what is real, is this all a conspiracy, and falling deeper and deeper into this plot. This movie doesn't have a version of that character, really, because this movie sets up a series of characters who find out, oh no, he's the Antichrist, we gotta get him, and then they're like instantly killed in some Final Destination kind of way.
Yeah, and that's exactly the same problem I had with this movie when I saw it, is that there was no relatable character that you could root for to see them succeed in the end. Like they kept, as you mentioned, they kept setting that reset button, and therefore the only character that you are latched onto or anchored through is Damien, but you don't really care about.
Yeah, you don't
him.
care about him. So the movie itself is kind of a slog to get through, because there's no real emotional attachment for us to anchor ourselves onto until like the last half hour of the movie, maybe, when I think it's the uncle becomes kind of the main character then.
Yeah. But by then it's too late.
Yeah, exactly. I will give this movie that it has a couple of really cool set pieces. It gets a little bit more exploitative as far as schlockiness, especially when it comes to the violence. There's this one bird attack with the semi truck and all this. It's so over the top. It's kind of funny. And there's one scene. It's a confrontation between Damien and his cousin in some woods. Which I will say, if there's anything near iconic in that movie, it's that scene. It's a very well done scene.
Yeah. Okay. Like, and that was the one thing I was thinking. Like, it would have been nice if the movie was a little bit more building up that kind of relationship, but it wasn't enough.
Yeah. Cut out all the other stuff. Make it about Damien and make Damien know who he is from the beginning of the movie. Just have him be fully formed evil from the beginning. That I think that would streamline the movie uh, quite a bit. So yeah, no, that's a not a recommendation on Damien Omen 2. I do watch Omen 3, which I'll be rewatching hopefully the next week too, because I do quite enjoy that one, despite what anyone may say. Last one I'm going to touch on briefly is Nate. You've seen Juno, haven't you?
Yes, I have.
Do you remember the movie Ellen Page watches, the horror movie she watches in that movie in
Oh,
Juno, and
yes.
she says it's better than Suspiria,
It was the House of Gore.
the Wizard of
The Wizard
Gore.
of Gore, that's what it was.
Yeah.
Yes. So you were able to find this movie and watch it.
I watched it on Criterion streaming service. They have a whole bunch of Herschel Gordon Lewis movies on there right now.
Oh gosh. Okay. Well, how did you fan it?
So, The Wizard of Gore, 1970, directed by Herschel Gordon Lewis. A TV talk show hostess and her boyfriend investigates a shady magician who has the ability to hypnotize and control the thoughts of people in order to stage gory onstage illusions using his powers of mind bending. This movie's trash.
I mean, from what I kind of remember seeing in Juno, it looked like
Yeah.
trash. It's like one of those like really low budget snuff films that it's like there's nothing redeemable. There's no real value in it. It's just anyone who's like a gore fan is
It is
gonna.
so incompetent on every single level. It's cut together very awkwardly. There are
Mhm,
shots where there's no continuity between where characters are standing. None
mhm,
of the angles are interesting at all, and they
mhm,
cut between each other very confusingly. I had to read about the movie afterwards to realize that uh, during some of the onstage butcherings, there are some shots of him hacking people to bits, and there's gore everywhere. And then it cuts to another shot, and there's like no blood on him at all. And I thought it was just a continuity mistake, but apparently it's supposed to be part of the movie in like a thematic thing about he's doing an illusion, people don't realize what's going on. That didn't come across to me at all. I thought it was just a continuity error on set.
Yeah, exactly. See, that I kind of looked into that as well, and I was like, is this like a continuity issue? Like, was this guy like his first time? No, you're right. It was because of that reason, but there's no establishment of
It
that.
is such a pretentious movie, and I don't think it's necessarily meaningfully pretentious. I think it's just padding out dialogue with a bunch of mumbo jumbo of, oh, what are we? Who are we? Look, I am you, you are him, whatever. All this stuff that doesn't make any sense. I think he's just padding out the runtime with this dialogue. I will say the main guy, Ray Sager, I think his name is, who plays Montag the Magnificent, he's kind of fun to watch. He's so hammy, but it works for this kind of movie. The gore is interesting to look at, but it's not effective. I will say I wasn't bored watching it. I was entertained watching it. Like there would be shots of he'd be like impaling some woman's head, and then it cuts to like the most obvious dummy of all time. And it's like I don't know, just nothing about this movie was effective in any way, but it's mildly entertaining. So I'm gonna not recommend The Wizard of Gore, but if it sounds like something you're like, hey, it's almost like MST3K level stuff. So if that sounds like the sort of thing that you want to check out on like a late night, you could do worse for entertainment value.
Right, exactly.
So that is all I got. Nate, what you got?
So since we last did our podcast, Joe, I haven't had a chance to really sit down and watch anything, but in preparation for this, I've been trying to really kind of brush up on the history of just horror in general. So one of the things I was watching in the spare time that I've had was called this. It's basically a BBC documentary called "History of Horror" with Mark Gaddis. And really, all it is this guy who's going to all these Hollywood set pieces from famous movies on the Universal lot to Paramount to talking with like filmmakers like George Romero, John Carpenter and a lot of just these famous pioneers in the horror genre in the past 70s and 80s. And just talking about like these hallmark, movies that have defined the horror genre time and time again. And it was an interesting watch. I kind of was able to, brush up on, certain production companies and production houses like Hammer was a big one back in the 70s and 60s who are trying to, revive the whole horror genre. Especially, they were kind of like doing great stuff with color that was just drawing audiences back in, but also being very careful with it because Universal would do, they would just slap a lawsuit on you if they saw any resemblance of, their original Frankenstein monster. So Hammer's production house would have to redefine or like redesign all these famous horror monsters. And that was kind of just interesting to watch, and just how, even in the 70s, they started to get very experimental with it. So it was a very entertaining watch. I mean, obviously, the guy's kind of, hamming it up for just his audience. He knows these are the horror fans, the horror, lovers. So he kind of was pandering to them a lot, like more of just like, oh, I went to this set piece and I saw this. So it had its campy moments, but overall, a pretty good watch. I enjoyed it.
Awesome. I've been wanting to get into more of these documentary series about horror films. There's a series by it's on Shudder's streaming service from Mickey Keating. He's the director of a few movies. I'm not crazy about his movies, but he's done movies like Pod and Darling. But he hosts the series, but it's a very interesting series where he does. It's very kind of tongue in cheek, a lot of effects in it. But he shows, oh, we'll do an interview with a horror filmmaker here, and then we'll do an effects thing here and show you how they do this kind of effect, and then we'll talk about some horror movies here. So I've been wanting to watch more stuff like that because it's always fascinating to me.
Let's see. Other stuff I've been listening to. I was today brushing up on the Pure Cinema podcast hosted by the New Beverly Cinema. The guys who host this, they obviously, have these little like screening festivals that they'll do sometimes at the New Beverly. And they brought on this guest, Patrick Bromley from F This Movie. And they were talking about this interesting thing that they're doing this week they're called Horrors All-Nighters. And what they are is like, they'll basically get a lineup of movies, and for the next 24 to 48 hours, they'll show nothing but these movies. So they'll like, if I had an audience in this theater, this is the lineup of the movies with the trailers I would put them through. And it was kind of interesting how they structured their lineup, because they were like, okay, well, at 3 o'clock, you're going to be drowsy, you're going to be tired. So put on a little bit of Italian horror to kind of like make you feel like you're in a dreamlike state. And then as you get more sleepy, just put something a little bit more fun, like Monster Squad, just to liven it up again. So they were kind of like doing their own like little, horror all-nighter lineups, and it was kind of just interesting some of the choices they were making. So I don't know, and I've never heard of this thing like horror all-nighters, but going 24 hours of just watching nothing but horror movies kind of does sound interesting.
I heard about that, and I wish that I had made more trips to the New Beverly when I lived in San Diego, because I went there once for a double feature of Andromeda Strain and Colossus: The Forbidden Project, and I was thinking, why haven't I been here more often? It's a fantastic place.
Yeah, and honestly, some of the movies that they were spitting out, I was like, I've never heard these, but just from the way they were talking, it's like they kind of grew up with this. They like old VHS copies and even just like 80s movies that no one's ever heard of, but they said like, oh, but we're so into Canadian horror. And I was like, there's so many genres out there. I keep forgetting, like nowadays it's hard to keep up. But yeah, I was listening to that. And then just to finish all up, I decided to try to watch a vampire movie, and what better one to catch up on but Nosferatu, made back in 1922. So it's basically a loose adaptation off of the Dracula story by Bram Stoker, where, we have this Count Orlok, played by Max Scherlich, who is probably one of the most terrifying vampires to ever come on screen. The way he looks, his costume, his makeup is just terrifying in itself. It's kind of like up there with Lon Chaney's Phantom of the Opera. But watching it again, I forgot how hokey it was. Like everyone's acting is so over the top. It's so German expressionistic. And here's a funny thing. The Stroker family sued this movie because they never got permission to use the Dracula storyline. That's why it's kind of like a loose adaptation, that they ordered all the prints to get burned. So there's a very few surviving prints nowadays, and that's why like it's hard to find them.
Yeah, I haven't seen Nosferatu probably since college. I remember liking it, but
Mhm.
it is. I mean, it is over the top because it's like one of those silent films, and it's from a different era of acting.
Oh yeah, yeah,
But
but
I've been really meaning to rewatch this one because it is a classic that everyone talks about, but I don't feel like we really watch it enough.
yeah, no, I mean, like, as far as, like, German expressionism, it's nowhere up near, like, The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, but I don't know, like, Max, Schaer's, performance as the Count on screen is still iconic in itself, and that's probably just one of the reasons just to watch it. Like, there's some shots in there where the guy peeks out of the door, and it just cuts to this long hallway shot, and he's, like, just standing there at the end, just staring at you, and I don't know, like, to watch this, like, with all the lights down in your house, with that on screen and the music playing, it can send shivers up your spine still.
I'll show it to my kids, give them some more nightmare fuel.
There you go. Be a great dad like that. Uh, but yeah, that's all I watched.
Awesome. Well, with that, let's move on to our main topic, Halloween grab bag. All right, so here's how this is going to work. I've got a list of Halloween inspired movie topics here. Nate's got his candy.
Oh no, well, it's supposed to be your bag, but yeah, it's my candy bag.
It helps maintain the illusion.
Yeah, there we go.
And we're just gonna pick some of these at random in my random topic generator and see what we got. So I know last time we had a timer going for this. Should we set a timer for each one, or just kind of go till we feel like we've spent each topic?
Let's do a timer. Yeah.
Okay, I'll go ahead and time us then.
Alrighty, sounds good. I'll have you be in charge of that then, Nate. All right, so here we go. Our first topic is: in the past 10 years, what movies would be considered good Halloween movies?
Trick or Treat. Wait, when did that come out? I don't know.
I was about to say that. I'm like, I don't know when Trick or Treat came out. 2007, just missed the boat.
Oh, not too bad.
Man, did it really come out in 2007?
I know. I was like, time flies.
That's crazy. My go-to horror movie of recent history, I know this might be a controversial choice to some people, is The Conjuring.
I actually don't think it's a controversial choice. I think it's kind of one of the best well done thriller movies I've seen in a long time.
Well, yeah, I know that's pretty highly acclaimed, but I know that also today it's kind of gone under a reevaluation where a lot of people, I feel like there's kind of a backlash to it because of the sequels and the spin-offs, and a lot of people just kind of think of it like, oh, it's that movie. That movie wasn't all that good to begin with anyway, and I think it's kind of tainted the movie in some people's minds.
Mhm.
Almost like how the Star Wars prequels go through ebbs and flows of sometimes it's cool to hate it and sometimes people like it again.
Mhm.
Yeah.
No, yeah.
But I've always loved The Conjuring. I think it's it's easily one of my go-to modern day haunted house movies or exorcism movies.
No, that's a good call. I mean, I remember actually seeing it in theaters and just being quite on the edge of my seat. Like it definitely, because it's like produced by the same guys who did Insidious. A lot of those jump scares are there, and I don't know. I thought they were done much better in this movie.
I'd say and then for another movie I would add Sinister.
Oh, Sinister, absolutely. I think that's a great one too.
Yep.
That was good.
I'm trying to remember the name of the director who did it, but yeah,
Scott Derrickson.
Scott Derrickson.
Yeah.
You know?
I like that one too because it wasn't too much of like jump scares and stuff like that. It was just very, very eerie and very creepy. Like almost every shot was just like the main character or whatever was just like off center, off to the side, and just like looking. It was just like looking down just a dark hallway. It's just so freaking creepy, man. But it was good. And then when it finally like worked its way up to like the actual scary parts, it was still great.
Yeah, no, it is good. I'll have to admit. I think one of the films in my book, I would say, is Hereditary. Joe, I know you still haven't gone around to seeing this, which I feel like is almost a huge sin on your part because
I know. I do need to see this one.
only because like the way it taps into the family drama aspect of it is something I think that makes it a lot more unsettling because I think that's why I bought in the whole jump scares and the horror setups and just even the whole reveal at the end. I thought it was much more effective when I realized the dynamic of this family. Um, and it's just like it's very unsettling, and even just what you find out about the mother and what her intentions are and what's going on, and realizing this is kind of like on a rolling hill and there's no way of stopping it. I bought into it a lot more, and a lot of like the stuff that happens in it, they are kind of ridiculous, but I think at that point you're just so kind of confused by what's going on and so endeared to some of these characters. You're like, geez, I have no idea what's going on, and I'm in the same boat as you. So
Two more I just want to throw out there. As far as just go-to movies that are just a fun time around Halloween, I would say Cabin in the Woods is probably near the top of my list.
oh yeah, I'd say so.
And then just at the tail end of it, 2009, so still technically the last 10 years, Sam Raimi's Drag Me to Hell.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm surprised you didn't list
Uh,
that one first off.
Well, yeah, especially considering I just rewatched that one recently. But out of the few that I mentioned here, I'd probably say as far as just straight up horror classics that are good for Halloween time, I'd say The Conjuring and Cabin in the Woods are the first two that come to mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Well, that's 5 minutes.
Alrighty, that's it. See you guys next podcast.
We're done.
All right, let's move on. Next topic. Next topic is favorite candy to get when trick or treating.
Oh, anything with peanut butter. Reese's.
I agree.
I
Chocolate-
like what do you call is it sweet tarts, like the little ones rolled up. I've never been as big on the chocolate candies. I like the candies I think nobody else likes. It's just kind of like the harder stuff and the kind of the sweet and the kind of the tart stuff. It's like everything else that doesn't kind of fall into either of those categories. Like I like candy corn, sweet
Mhm.
tarts. I like all the weird stuff.
hmm Honestly, some of the stuff I really like is like I know they're not really popular anymore, but while growing up, Wonka candy was actually always really good. So anything that was like, sugary and sour.
Oh, the
But-
nerds are great.
Nerds were really
Nerds.
good.
I
I always like anything sour. I love sour candy. So like getting like warheads or something like that. Oh, that was
oof. Well, that's a lot much even for me, I think. Actually, you know what? Butterfingers are my go-to candy. Actually, even today, those are probably my favorites.
Yeah, and that's a kind of a peanut butter chocolate candy in a way.
yeah, it is.
Let's see there's some other ones out there, but I think like okay, I guess not a favorite candy, but a candy I always got really tired of, Tootsie Rolls. I don't know
Yeah.
why. Tootsie Rolls kind of got on my nerves after a while, and like when it's like the one candy that every single parent has at every single door, you're like there was no variety.
It's because they sell them in like huge bags at like the grocery store, and like they're like one of the cheapest ones to buy. So like everyone will get them, and you just end up with a ton of Tootsie Rolls. But yeah, I'm in the same boat. It's just like they're fine. It's candy. It's still sweet and chocolatey, but it's not like it's nowhere near as good as a lot of the other stuff out there.
Let me ask you guys something. Did you ever get like at one time, like when you went to someone's house and they gave you like a European candy? Like it was just like, you could tell it's not from your local grocery store, but it was still like some of the best candy you ever had.
I rarely got anything like that, honestly. Although I've known people who did.
Yeah. For some reason, one year, and I don't know why, but I got a stroopwafel once, like a mini stroopwafel. And it was like a little kind of like just a little packet of like 5. And I thought they were so good.
I don't even know what that is.
Stroopwafels? You don't know what stroopwafels are?
I think I've
man.
had them probably, but like I don't remember.
It's like those glazed, like waffle cone, honey flavored sandwich things you see like at Starbucks. They sell them a lot.
Maybe it's not ringing a bell for me. But did you guys ever get anything like? Did you ever come across one of those houses that was trying to be like healthy and like give like
Oh.
an apple or some like?
Little apple snacks. Yep. Celery sticks. There was one
Oh,
house.
Celery sticks?
Yes. What it was the weirdest thing. Like someone had basically frozen peanut butter and celery sticks with like this sweet, like stevia glaze or something like that.
Oh,
And it was frozen and they gave it to me. I'm like, What is this?
I mean, peanut butter and celery sticks, like, it's not a bad snack during the day. It's a horrible trick-or-treating idea.
It is, because there was no way to put it in the bag. Because this person just, like, handed it to us, like, on a platter, and they said, "Take one." I'm like,
It's not even like a little wrapper.
and you have no choice but to eat it, basically, at that point.
Throw it in the bag, man.
Should have just taken it with you off the porch and thrown it in the gutter.
I think I saw a lot of kids doing that.
Oh my god.
All right. Alrighty. Next topic. Let me pull it up. Laughably bad horror movies.
We're talking about what was it? Wizard of Gore, I think.
Oh yeah, Wizard of Gore is up there definitely,
Mhm.
or down there, I should say.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think, just the later Nightmare on Elm Streets, like, after the 3rd one, when they got into the 4th one, there's just a lot of stuff where, like, Freddy Krueger, is just doing some outrageous stuff, and you can't take it seriously at that point.
Oh yeah. I bet like a lot of those, like, yeah, just like the 5th and 6th sequels, and then the crossovers where it's, Freddy versus Jason. Yeah, I bet there's a lot of dumb shit in that.
Yeah, it's close enough. Your mileage may vary. I'm on Letterboxd right now, and I'm looking over a list of horror movies that I've seen from my lowest rankings. I'm looking through this. I'm like, this is stuff I would never want to watch again. It's not fun, you know. Area 407. We got some of the Hellraiser sequels. The I Spit on Your Grave sequels, that kind of stuff. But
Mhm.
then as you move up a little bit, I start ranking some of these movies a little bit higher that are still terrible movies, but they're kind of entertaining. Like I got House 4, The Repossession on here.
Oh my gosh, I forgot that House made a 4th sequel.
They made 4 of those movies, and it has the infamous Pizza Man sequence. Which, if no one's seen this, go into YouTube and Google House 4 Pizza Man scene. It's damn near iconic. Or the crime lord that forces people to chug like vials of his phlegm when they mess up.
Oh god. Jeez, where did they I don't know where the writers were going with that, but okay.
Oh man, so you got stuff like that, or you got stuff like Psycho 3 we talked about on the YouTube channel. That's got some pretty fun moments in there.
I think some of the Saw movies kind of fall into that too. Like, it seems like they're trying to be serious, but they're just, it's dumb.
The Saw sequels just end up droning on. It becomes repetitive, and as the series gets more convoluted with its kind of head up its own ass of its mythology, it
Mhm.
gets to be less fun to watch, especially in some of the later sequels. Like there's like
Yeah.
a span of like I think like 4, 5, 6, or 3, 4, 5, something like that. It
Mhm.
just it stops becoming fun to watch, and just here's a bunch of gore shots, and here's a whole bunch of history and backstory.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
I think
guess
after 4 it stopped being kind of entertaining, at least.
yeah,
Yeah.
I would have to say, Joe, also, kind of like in the same ballpark, some of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre sequels that came after, once I think Michael Bay's production company took over. Like, I guess I was over at your place and you were watching, I think it was number 8, number 7.
Oh,
I
right.
don't
Yeah, that
know.
was I think that was Texas Chainsaw 3D.
Okay, so that one I remember
We had
just started watching it when I was over at your place. And yeah, I was just kind of just laughing at how stupid these kids were. Like, oh, it has one of the best song inserts in
That's
the road
right.
trip, but it was the best like um country bluegrass like gospel song you could ever imagine coming out of a
Weird.
horror movie, and it was so perfectly placed.
As far as Texas Chainsaw Massacre movies go, I might put this in the same category, but Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the next generation or the new generation, that one might fit on a lot of people's definitions of this because I kind of enjoyed that movie, but it's the one with Matthew McConaughey and Renee Zellweger in it.
Oh, with him
And
cutting like the knife into his skin.
Matthew
Yes.
McConaughey is terrifyingly hilariously intense in that movie,
Hmm.
and it's fun to watch, but you're also worried. Like at one point he's holding Renee Zellweger up against the wall, with like I think he has like a knife to her throat, and you're watching this, and I'm getting the impression that she's actually like pissed off at him, like okay, you're hurting me now, stop it. But she like but she just stops shy of saying it.
I think what just makes that movie funny is that that's Matthew McConaughey in a Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
He is so over the top in that movie, and it's
Uh,
kind of great. Let's get another one in here. How about What is the ultimate Halloween movie that isn't John Carpenter's Halloween?
Any of the like the old like Friday the 13th, like The Thing, like
I really don't like Friday the 13th, honestly, if we're being
I
honest here.
I
I
don't
don't
know. Like this is kind of an interesting one because Joe, I guess for that, do you mean like if it's a horror movie that's set or based around the actual date of Halloween, or if it's just like a good Halloween movie to be shown on Halloween, or
I think I think it can mean what you want it to mean in this situation. What I take this to mean is what is the ultimate movie to watch around Halloween time? What movie would you recommend to people?
um, for me, I would always say Monster Squad. Like I think that's just a given a go-to one. Like it's family friendly enough. It has all the horror monsters in it in one box, and it's Fred Decker, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'm just thinking of some of my go-to movies to watch around Halloween. As I'm going through some of them right now. The Robert Wise's The Haunting is always on my list.
Oh, that is a good one. Yeah.
One that I watched, and again, we've talked about this on the YouTube channel. We've had a review of it, but I'm sure wouldn't be on very many people's lists. Is House 2: The Second Story,
Hmm.
which is just kind of a blast to watch around Halloween. It's like you can throw it on in the background of parties. You can sit down and watch it and have fun with it. It's kind of the ultimate Halloween movie. It's set around Halloween. There's people in costumes. There's goofiness. Another one I would put up there would be, as far as Halloween movies, is Halloween 3: Season of the Witch, which I just watched. I know, but I watched this for the first time last year, and I love that movie so much. It's almost like it kind of has a Ray Bradbury meets technology kind of feel. I love the mixture of kind of old time mythology horror, with ancient gods and demons and all that mixed with technology and terror around technology. It's like Grimm's fairy tales mixed with Chopping Mall, kind of, which all blends together in this very kind of Ray Bradbury esque tale, which for me works very well. I enjoy the hell out of that movie. So I would recommend that one as a good watch around Halloween.
Trick or Treat as well, I think would be that's a very fitting movie to watch around Halloween.
Trick or Treat, yes. I need to rewatch that one, but I remember that one
Yeah.
is another one of those.
Yeah, I guess for me, when it comes to Halloween, I'm always one of those guys that like falls into that ballpark of watching very, very disturbing Halloween movies, like The Exorcist or even Hereditary. Like I kind of go for that, so it's really hard for me to get any of my friends to watch them. But I don't know. I guess I could say also maybe I think more recently, like Netflix has produced a lot of great just Hollywood fanfare. Like the House on Haunting Hills was really good.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
yeah. We're talking TV shows. Yeah, sure.
Evil Dead 2 is always good for a watch around Halloween. Also,
Oh, for
just
sure.
the haunted cabin, over the
Mm,
top goofiness,
mhm.
the gore in
Yep.
that one. Oh, and this one might come up if this topic comes up later. But another movie that I would recommend is Something Wicked This Way Comes.
That is sadly a very underrated good film in general. I think I remember watching it when I was a kid and I enjoyed the hell out of it.
I actually watched it for the first time last year. It's difficult to find. As of right now, I don't think you can find it online anywhere. You have to find a physical copy of it.
Yeah, I remember actually watching it on an old VHS that Disney was like producing as part of like their collection series. And it was at that right age. I was like still young, but not too young that I couldn't handle it. So it was good.
Yeah, but talk about just great spooky imagery, kind of this
Hmm.
for Halloween. I love movies that kind of have a threat to children, because I think that kids especially really latch onto that and makes it a little bit more frightening. Which is, I mean, again, one reason I love Halloween 3 so much, because it's like the ultimate overboard threat against children. But in Something Wicked This Way Comes is from a child's perspective,
Right.
and it's about these kids seeing this kind of supernatural horror around them and trying to get the adults in on it to find out what's going on, but the adults get sucked into it too, and it's the spooky carnival. It's got some really terrifying imagery for a Disney movie in there too.
No, I agree. And it almost in a way kind of like set the stage for just 80s, like, kid adventure horror films in general. Like, I don't know. I could see like the Goonies taking a lot from this. And even just, you look at Stranger Things and it's kind of almost following a bit of the same formula in some areas.
No, yeah, I could see that.
Yeah.
What's the next one?
Alrighty, so should found footage stop being used so much as a gimmick for horror/thriller movies?
I think so.
Yeah.
Interestingly enough, I wrote an article on this recently for my old university's blog, but the premise of the article was what has happened to found footage and why don't we see it as much anymore?
hmm Yeah, because it was huge for a while.
Yeah.
Like everything was found footage. It was like a few years after Blair Witch or so.
Yeah, no, I remember like just a lot of like horror films like that kind of followed it afterwards, like Wreck, VHS, As Above, So Below. A lot of these films that kind of followed the very same formula. And after a while, like there's only so much you can do with that kind of gimmick or that genre that it just gets
Yeah.
really old.
Yeah, that's one of the biggest problems with it. It gets old so fast, and it's hard to do something really kind of innovative with it because a lot of the stuff has kind of already been done by the early movies that really kind of worked with it, and so anything after is kind of just rehashing a lot of the similar styles.
I think the one movie that came really close to actually doing something new and different
hmm
was As Above, So Below. Now, I'm not saying it's a good found footage movie. It's one I personally like because I could see them actually dabbling into different genres to try and make the found footage work. Like, they're employing archaeology, kind of this Indiana Jones, Nathan Drake kind of element to it, which I thought was kind of cool. But it still fell into the same pitfalls, the same kind of gimmicks as found footage always gets into.
Yeah.
A friend of all of ours, Mike,
Yep.
that I used to room with, there was a time, probably for like a couple of years, where he and I would do nothing but watch like the most bottom of the barrel, terrible found footage movies we could find out there.
Oh,
Stuff
that
like
that
Area 407 and Unaware.
that continued after you moved out and when I moved in with him.
That makes me so happy.
Kept up the legacy.
But as you guys said about found footage, though, it's the problem with the genre and the reason it kind of petered out in the end was because there's only so much you can do with it. It has the same tricks over and over again, and so many of them end with the same thing of, oh, the person gets killed, the camera falls over, and they tread so much water where it's just a setup. Oh, we have to have this contrived setup for why this person is going to be filming everything that they're seeing, and
Yeah.
then they're just kind of walking around filming the most boring shit throughout the whole movie.
And I think they missed the whole point with what the Blair Witch was trying to do with that kind of a technique was to give this illusion like this is real. Like that was a whole part of why Blair Witch I think works so well and why it's still kind of lives in everyone's minds is because you actually think these were kids that went into the woods, they got lost and no one found them again. But once that's gone, once the illusion is revealed, like, oh yeah, this is all staged, the found footage gimmick it's not effective.
But it can work.
It can.
Yeah,
I
it
think
can.
you just need to find new ways of doing it. And I think it just might be just put it in different genres. I would like
Yeah.
to see it work in different genres that isn't horror or thriller or suspense based.
It would be interesting to see it adapted to other genres. I don't know if it necessarily work as well, but still, yeah. I mean, maybe worth a try.
I've always thought it'd be interesting to try to do something like a romance, as found footage romance, and how would you do that?
That would be interesting for sure.
But as far as what's happened to found footage, I don't think it's disappeared so much as it's just evolved. I think what we're seeing today is more experimental kind of movies that try to do something like that. So, for instance, have you guys heard of Screen Life movies?
No.
Right. So it's stuff like what was that movie with the people getting killed by the ghosts in the computer screen?
Oh, you're talking about
Yeah.
Unfriended.
Unfriended. That's the one I'm
Oh
thinking
my
about.
God.
So
Yeah.
movies like that, you had Unfriended came out. They made a sequel to that one. There was Searching came out, I think, last year with John Cho.
Which was more of like a detective crime drama.
Right, exactly. But it's the same sort of thing where it's, the whole movie is on this computer screen. And I think we're going to be seeing more stuff like that. And I think that's going to be the new found footage in a way. I don't think it's going to be as widespread as the found footage one was. I don't think we're going to be seeing as many of those. But I think that's kind of where the genre has gone. It's gone to more of this kind of other experimental stuff. Should we do one more topic?
Yeah,
Sure.
I'd say let's do it.
Alrighty, so last one. Most lovable villain / monster. Hannibal Lecter.
Yeah.
I just want to give a big old hug.
Sure, yeah. I mean, him and Clarice. That will be one of the greatest romances on screen.
I ship it.
Kind of going back to Monster Squad, I would have to say Frankenstein's monster in that is very lovable. I think Chris Noonan, the actor who plays him, just brings a certain kind of just innocence to the character that obviously was there with the original Boris Karloff monster design. But I think he just takes it to the next level when he's bonding with the little sister. And I don't know. I think that's the one thing that I like about the movie.
The you know which one comes to mind first for me is a movie I've actually rewatched recently, which was Return of Swamp Thing. Have you seen Return of Swamp Thing?
No.
No, but I tried to watch the recent DC Swamp Thing. You know.
So Return of Swamp Thing was in 1980s. It was a sequel to Wes Craven's Swamp Thing movie. And Return of Swamp Thing goes full on horror comedy, like goofy over the top stuff. But Swamp Thing himself is just so lovable in it. Basically, throughout the movie, someone will get accosted by some monster or some villain, some scientific experimental stuff. And then he'll just burst in, and his theme song is this triumphant, do 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 kind of a thing. And he'll just burst through the wall to save the day, and gives you a thumbs up, and he'll take a picture with you because, damn it, he's the guy.
Yeah, he's everybody's hero. He's everyone's friend.
Like that's like a whole scene where it's literally just like a couple of kids who are like, "Hey, can we get a picture with you?" He's like, "Yeah, sure, why not, kids?" It's great. Most lovable monster easily Swamp Thing from the Return of Swamp Thing. Does Belial from Basket Case count?
I have not seen it, so I can't really say.
He's a vile, horrible mound of flesh in the first movie, but in the sequels they kind of try to make you get his pain, you get where he's coming from. He just wants to live his life. That's an instance of a character where they kind of turned him that way over the course of the movie series.
What about Anthony Perkins in Psycho? At least for like the first half, maybe.
Likeable, yes. Lovable.
Okay, yeah, maybe that's pushing too far, but
Well, maybe in the TV show Bates Motel with Freddie Highmore.
Yeah, Norman Bates is another interesting one because even when you first meet him in Psycho, something's off about him. Even in his offness, there's something still endearing about him. Like he was designed. It's almost like he was scientifically designed to be likable, and that's what makes him off-putting.
That is true. Oh, kind of we're still on this page. I would have to say Michael Parks from Tusk. Yeah, how can you not love a wonderful little old Canadian man like that who just wants to turn you into a walrus?
How could you not? Yeah.
I think it's funny how you go to Michael Parks and not Justin. I thought you were going to go with Justin Long with that, and the fact that he gets turned into a walrus.
Well, I guess you could go with both. I think, Michael Parks just sells a lot more for me because he's doing horrible stuff, but he's laughing and smiling and singing Lewis's carols, Walrus and the Carpenter, and you're like, I can't take you seriously, even though what you're doing is horrific.
His performance in that movie is underrated. Whether or not you like Tusk, Michael Parks is great in that movie. Yeah. It's a great little movie. I still dig Tusk. Anyway, do we have any other ideas for this? I feel like for this one specifically, Lovable Movie Monsters, I feel like we're missing a lot of really obvious answers that we're gonna get yelled at for missing.
Yeah. Geez. You're right. There's probably a lot that we are missing. So maybe we should just ask our fans if they know any. Please comment below.
Yeah, comment some of your favorite lovable movie monsters and tell us which ones we've missed, because I know there's just a butt ton out there that we're just not remembering at the moment. I think it's because we watched the wrong kinds of movies.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were 6 when we were starting to watch Halloween and The Thing.
Well, and you and I are watching all this, Omen 2.
That's true.
Stuff like that.
Here's one thing, if you don't mind us just throwing this into the pool right now. What were movies, I guess you could say, that kind of terrified you as when you were growing up? Like, they don't necessarily have to be a horror movie, but were there any like scenes from movies or just, movies in general that freaked you out?
I got 2.
Okay.
First one was Gremlins. My parents got me and my little sister that for Christmas back when I was like, I don't remember how old I was. I don't think I was even like, I might have been 10 or something like that. But they got it for us, and they're like, "Hey, yeah, you should watch it. It's a comedy movie. It's not a comedy movie to a kid.
No,
that's just scary, man.
Yeah, having these little having these little gizmo Furbies just like suddenly become these weird, slimy terrifying gremlins that just with the
Yeah,
vicious teeth. Yeah, it's terrifying.
yeah, that scared the hell out of me. My mom felt so bad that she had us watch it.
One of my earliest memories, and this is kind of a fun story. It's not a horror movie, but it was E.T. And how this kind of came about was I think I was about 3 when I first saw it, and my cousin was 4 or something like that. And I think it's that first introduction to E.T. when he's running and screaming through the woods. I don't know how this happened, but her freaking out made us and my brother freak out. And for the longest time, we kind of like had a stigma of like never touch that movie, never see that movie for the longest time. I got over it eventually, but yeah, I just remember that being one that freaked the heck out of me.
Yeah.
The stuff that I remember frightening me as a kid, like stuff that really like stuck with me and really frightened me. It's not necessarily movies so much, but just random stuff I saw on TV. Like for instance, I remember very vividly when I was a little kid. I probably must have been about probably about 4 years old or so, and I was at my grandpa's house visiting, and the TV was just on, and I found out years later what this was. I didn't know what it was at the time, but it was an episode of the like I think it's the '90s Hercules TV show,
Okay.
and it was someone walking through a cave calling out for Hercules, like Hercules, where are you? And some monster pops up on the screen to scare her, and that stuck with me so much as a kid that whenever I went to bed, I turn off the lights, run across the room, and jump into bed because I afraid something would like pop out from behind the bed.
Yeah.
You gotta throw the blankets on because that's like armor. You can't get hit if you got the blankets on.
Oh, absolutely. The
I,
monsters.
I I went all the way. There was like a good span of like a year where I slept with my head under the blankets,
Suffocating yourself.
pretty much.
Oh my gosh. Actually, a lot of the Indiana Jones movies while growing up freaked the hell out of me. Raiders of the Lost Ark. They're going
Yeah,
through the
same.
temple, freaking like, skeletons skewered on like gates, and the very end when all their faces are melting because the demons
Yeah.
out of the ark are coming out. Yeah, you being 5 and watching that, yeah, it'll stick with you.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
There was actually one movie, and this is a very strange movie to throw out there, but Joe, are you familiar with The Shadow? The one that
Uh,
Alec Baldwin was in?
I'm familiar of it. I'm not familiar with it.
Okay, it is not a good movie by any standards. You can totally tell it's trying to be a bad knockoff of just Batman in general. Uh, but in the opening scene, there's a scene where there's this flying dagger that has a face on it, and it's chasing Alec Baldwin's character in this uh, this Asian temple, and it's making the most horrifying face, and it's like biting him. Like it has teeth, and it was like attacking him and biting his leg, and stabbing into his shin and flying. I was horrified at that.
This sounds like the best movie ever made.
You should watch it. I mean, it's definitely one to just laugh at because of how bad it is and how offensive it is. Oh, and Ian McKellen's in it as well. But I just remember that dagger scared me and scarred me for a long time.
Other movie that got me really fucked up is watching Jurassic Park. I think I was
Really?
like 12. So yeah, that I think partly the reason like why it scared me so much is because as a little kid, I love dinosaurs.
Mhm.
So many little kids do. I would read like history books and like textbooks and stuff like that about them just because I was so interested in them. And then so watching Jurassic Park messed with my head so much. It scared the hell out of me. And it wasn't necessarily like I was like jumping out of my seat, because I was so frightened, but it just sat with me for a long time. It was just like it just messed me
I think
up.
a big reason why it does mess you up, especially for the first time viewing, is because the practical effects of it just
Oh,
look so real. Like the puppetry is kind of like it falls in that same ballpark on why The Thing by John Carpenter looks so good. And even why something like, the early E.T. puppet just looks so good. Like there's something about practical effects in horror films that cannot really be supplemented with CGI. Like if it is
yeah,
with CGI, it better be done right. Because seeing something real and tangible there in an actual space with the actor, I think just brings that realism to life. And that's what makes it much more terrifying.
absolutely.
Yeah, as far as actual movies that scared me as a kid, the one that comes to mind didn't scare me for too long. It scared me at like a certain point, and then I grew to love the movie, and it became my favorite movie for quite a while as a kid, was The Page Master.
Oh yeah, the Jekyll and Hyde transformation. I remember
Yep,
that.
yep. There's a whole sequence where they go into it, because the whole movie's about Macaulay Culkin gets knocked unconscious in the library and goes into an animated world where books are alive. And they go to different genre sections of the library, and he goes to the horror section at one point, and I think it's Leonard Nimoy, I believe,
It
voices.
is Leonard Nimoy. Yep.
Yeah, Dr. Jekyll. And there's this whole sequence with going through the horror section, and Mr. Hyde is chasing after them, and that stuck with me for quite a while as a kid. Like a year or two later, I watched the movie, and it became my favorite movie for a while. I absolutely love that movie. But another one that comes to mind that I remember very vividly frightening me was Darby O'Gill and the Little People.
Really, you too?
Really? Okay, I've heard a few different people say that. Oh yeah, that movie frightened me. And for most people, it's the was it the coachman at the end of the movie?
For a lot of people, it's always the banshee. It's always a banshee that scares them.
Oh,
Like,
right. That whole sequence with the banshee and the coachman and all that stuff. But the part that got me wasn't those two sequences. It was the puka scene early on, and something about seeing this horse jump up and turn all these colors, and people and characters freaking out about it. Something about that stuck with me, just imagery wise, and I don't know why.
I guess it's like on the same level. Like, I guess like because you recently watched Creepshow, and
I
that
did, yes.
and that movie, all the vignettes use a lot of just very saturated and stylized colors to the point where it's like it's just strobing sometimes. And I don't know, something about color in horror has an effect on your senses. And I can see where you're coming from with the puka and the interchanging colored horse.
But yeah, absolutely. Whenever you talk about Darby O'Gill and the Little People, most people will say like, "Oh, the banshee," all that end sequence, which is again terrifying for a kids movie.
Well, for me, I never was bothered by it, but I remember my brother for the longest time was terrified of it. Sorry to throw you out there, bro, but yeah.
I'm not surprised. It's like a Grim Reaper in this, happy little Irish Disney movie.
Yeah, that's what makes it so good.
It's a great movie. Anyway, I guess that'll wrap us up for this Halloween episode of the Film Illiterates podcast. Alex, where can people find you?
You can find me on filmilliterates.com. We've got a bunch of the old episodes, old podcasts we've done. I really like the last one we did with the Director Spotlight with Derek Cianfrance.
That was actually one of my favorite ones, honestly, in a while that we've done.
Yeah, that was a good one. I was happy with it. Other than that, you can find me on Twitter at Alex D. Patton. If you want to check out what I'm listening to, I'm on Rate Your Music under Half Scrim. And then same thing under my anime list as well.
Nate?
Well, you can find me here at filmilliterates.com on the podcast, as well as doing videos with Joe and Alex. You can also find me on Instagram at Nathan_Stone_films.com. Or no, not .com. There's no .com in Instagram.
And you can find me at Film Illiterates on Twitter and on letterboxd.com. You can find me at film_illiterates. And as always, you can find all of our videos, podcast episodes, and all that at filmilliterates.com and youtube.com/filmilliterates. Keep it spooky, keep watching movies, and keep it easy.